Commander Jack Miller stood alone on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant. The ship was quiet, too quiet. Only the soft beeps from the control panels broke the silence. Through the main viewport, he watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was gone. Humanity was nearly extinct. Miller touched the worn metal surface of his captain's chair. The Defiant wasn't supposed to be humanity's last hope. It was just a test ship, running deep space trials when the attack happened. That was 3 weeks ago. "Commander, we're picking up a signal," said Susan Wright. The tactical officer's voice was tired but alert. She hadn't slept much since they got the news about Earth. Miller walked to her station. "What kind of signal?" "It's weak. Very weak." Susan's fingers moved quickly over her screen. "It's a human distress call from Europa." Alan Garcia looked up from the engineering console. "Europa? Jupiter's moon? That's impossible." The Carvec hit the entire solar system. "Play it," Miller ordered. A crackling voice filled the bridge. "This is Europa Research Station. We are under attack. Few survivors. Hidden in sub-level 5. Please, if anyone can hear this." The message cut off. Miller looked at the faces of his crew. They were all that remained of humanity's defense forces. Lisa Young, their medical officer, had been visiting from Earth Central Hospital when they left for the trials. Peter Collins at Communications was fresh from the academy. Kate Summers had been the youngest navigator in the fleet. Now she might be the only one left. "How old is that message?" Miller asked. "Based on signal degradation, about 4 days," Susan replied. "Could it be a trap?" Garcia asked. "The Carvac have used human signals before." Miller considered this. The alien species had appeared without warning. They used strange, organic-looking ships that could fold space itself. Within days, they had destroyed every major human colony. "Even if it's a trap, we have to check," Miller finally said. "If there are survivors, we can't leave them." "Sir, with respect, the Defiant is the last human warship," Susan said. "If we're destroyed, then humanity loses nothing it hasn't already lost," Miller replied. "But if there are people still alive, we gain something precious." The bridge fell silent. Each person processed the weight of his words. "Plot a course to Europa," Miller ordered. "Maximum stealth approach." Kate nodded and turned to her navigation screens. "Course plotted. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. "Engage," Miller said. The ship hummed as its engines powered up. The stars outside blurred slightly as they moved into faster-than-light travel. Miller returned to his chair. In the depths of the ship, 300 crew members went about their duties. Some were veterans. Many were just trainees who happened to be aboard for the test flight. None of them had signed up to be humanity's last hope. 18 hours later, the Defiant dropped out of FTL near Jupiter. The massive gas giant loomed before them, its swirling clouds a mixture of cream and red. Europa, its icy moon, was a small white dot against the planet's vastness. "Scan for Carvec ships," Miller ordered. Susan ran the scans. "Nothing in immediate orbit. There's debris, though. Lots of it." "The research station?" Miller asked. "I'm picking up what's left of it," Garcia said from his console. "The main structure is damaged, but some underground sections appear intact. There's a faint power signature." "Any life signs?" asked Dr. Young. Garcia shook his head. "Too much interference from Jupiter. We'll need to get closer." Miller stood up. "Prepare a landing team. Susan, you're with me. Dr. Young, we might need medical. Garcia, you monitor from here." As they prepared to board the shuttle, Miller looked at the small team. Their faces showed fear, but also determination. They might be walking into a trap, or they might find the first glimmer of hope since the fall of Earth. Either way, the mission was clear. The U.S. Defiant would fight on, as long as there was something left to fight for. The shuttle landed on Europa's icy surface with a soft thud. Outside, Jupiter filled half the sky, its massive form casting long shadows across the moon's white landscape. The research station came into view as they approached, a once proud facility now torn open like a crushed tin can. Miller, Dr. Young, and Susan stepped out in their spacesuits. The silence was complete. No wind, no life, just the crunch of ice beneath their boots. "The entrance is collapsed," Susan said, pointing to what used to be the main door. "We'll need to find another way in." They circled the ruined building, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. Garcia's voice came through their comms from the Defiant above. "I'm detecting a weak heat signature about 30 meters to your right," he said. "Might be an emergency access point." They found it hidden under a pile of debris. A small airlock door, its power nearly gone. Miller overrode the controls and forced it open manually. The three of them squeezed through into the darkness beyond. Inside, emergency lights cast a faint red glow over empty corridors. The air was thin but breathable, so they removed their helmets. The walls showed blast marks and signs of a desperate fight. "Hello," Miller called out. His voice echoed down the empty halls. "We're from the U.S. Defiant. We're here to help." No answer came. They moved deeper into the facility, following Garcia's directions toward the heat signature. Dr. Young stopped occasionally to examine bloodstains on the floor. "The blood is human," she said quietly. "But it's old. At least 4 days." They reached a sealed door labeled Sub-Level 5. The control panel was dead. Susan used a small device to bypass it, and the door slid open with a groan. "Eyes open," Miller whispered, pulling out his weapon. "We don't know what we'll find down there." Suddenly, footsteps echoed from below. Someone was running toward them. Miller raised his gun. A man appeared at the bottom of the stairs, wild-eyed and holding a makeshift spear. "Stop. Who are you?" "Commander Jack Miller, U.S. Defiant," Miller said, lowering his weapon. "We picked up your distress call." The man lowered his spear, his face collapsing with relief. "You came. You actually came." His voice broke. "I'm Joe Bennett, Chief Scientist. There are 5 of us left." Bennett led them deeper into the sublevel. The survivors had created a small camp around what looked like a laboratory. 4 other people looked up as they entered, 2 women and 2 men, all wearing torn lab coats and haunted expressions. "We were studying the ice samples when they came," Bennett explained. "The Carvec hit the surface facilities first. We sealed ourselves down here." "What happened?" Susan asked. Bennett gestured for them to follow him into the lab. In the center sat a strange object, a curved piece of metal unlike anything Miller had seen before. It glowed with a faint blue light. "We found this buried 2 kilometers down in the ice," Bennett said. "It's not human technology. It's not Carvec either. It's older, much older." "What is it?" Miller asked, stepping closer. "We believe it's a piece of something bigger," Bennett replied. "Something built by a race we've named the Forerunners. They existed millions of years ago. Based on our analysis, this technology was created as a defense against an ancient enemy." "The Carvec?" Dr. Young asked. Bennett shook his head. "We don't know. But when the Carvec arrived, this thing started to activate on its own. We think they can sense it. That's why they're here." A loud alarm suddenly blared from Susan's device. "Commander, we've got incoming. Carvec scout ships, 3 of them, entering Europa's orbit." Miller turned to Bennett. "We need to evacuate now. Grab only what's essential." "The artifact has to come with us," Bennett insisted. "It's too important to leave behind." As the scientists rushed to pack their equipment, a deep rumble shook the facility. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Carvec had arrived, and they were coming for whatever lay hidden beneath Europa's ice. Another explosion rocked the research station. Chunks of ice and metal fell from the ceiling. "We need to move now," Miller shouted over the noise. He grabbed the artifact while Bennett and his team gathered their data drives. Susan's voice was urgent in his ear. "Commander, the Carvec are landing outside. We have maybe 5 minutes." They ran through the shaking corridors, Dr. Young helping an injured scientist. The path to the airlock was blocked by fallen debris. This way, Bennett pointed to a narrow maintenance tunnel. It leads to the emergency launch bay. The group squeezed through the tight space. Behind them, strange clicking sounds echoed. The unmistakable noise of Karvek soldiers entering the facility. They reached the launch bay to find a single transport shuttle. It was old but looked functional. "Will this fly?" Miller asked. Bennett nodded. "It's basic, but it should get us to your ship." They piled inside while Bennett worked the controls. The engine sputtered to life just as the bay doors began to open. Through the gap, they could see 3 Karvek scout ships hovering above the research station. "Hold on," Bennett yelled as he punched the launch button. The shuttle shot forward, scraping against the partially open doors. They burst into space, immediately taking fire from the Karvek ships. "Garcia," Miller called into his comm. "We need pickup and cover fire." "On our way, Commander," came the reply. The Defiant appeared over the horizon of Europa, its weapons already firing at the Karvek scouts. The shuttle weaved between energy blasts as Bennett pushed its old engines to their limit. Suddenly, a direct hit rocked the small craft. Alarms blared as the shuttle began to spin. "We're losing pressure," Bennett shouted, blood running down his face from a new cut. "The main cabin is breached." Miller felt the artifact grow warm in his hands. Its blue glow intensified, pulsing like a heartbeat. The shuttle stabilized by itself. The artifact was somehow affecting the craft's systems. "It's responding to the threat," Bennett said in wonder. "Just like in our tests." They reached the Defiant's shuttle bay just as another blast hit them. The force threw everyone forward as they crash-landed on the deck. Peter Collins and a medical team rushed in as they stumbled out of the damaged shuttle. Bennett collapsed, a large piece of metal embedded in his side. "Get him to medical," Miller ordered. Within minutes, they were all on the bridge. The Defiant pulled away from Europa, taking fire from the growing number of Karvek ships. "Jump to FTL," Miller commanded. "Random coordinates, just get us out of here." Kate's hands flew over the navigation console. "Ready in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched and blurred as the ship jumped to safety. In the medical bay, Dr. Young fought to save Bennett. The scientist gripped Miller's arm with surprising strength. "The artifact," Bennett gasped. "It's just one piece of 7. You need to find them all." Miller placed the strange object on a table beside the bed. Its glow had dimmed now that they were safe. "What exactly is it?" Miller asked. "A key," Bennett whispered. "A weapon. Our only hope." He pulled a data drive from his pocket. "Everything we learned is here. Coordinates to the other pieces, too." His grip tightened as blood seeped through the bandages. "Promise me you'll find them. It's the only way to defeat the Karvek." Miller took the drive. "I promise." Bennett nodded, then his eyes closed for the final time. Back on the bridge, Alan Garcia and Peter Collins worked to decode the data from Europa. The screen filled with star maps and strange symbols. "It's coordinates," Garcia said. 6 of them, spread across different systems. "And this," Collins added, pointing to a complex diagram. "It looks like schematics for something massive, some kind of ancient technology." Miller looked at the faces of his crew and the surviving scientists from Europa. They were tired, scared, but there was something new in their eyes now. "Hope. Set course for the nearest coordinate," Miller ordered. "We have a promise to keep." The Defiant emerged from FTL travel near Valerinine, a small moon orbiting a gas giant in a forgotten corner of human space. The ship's engines hummed as they approached the dark side of the moon. "Any signs of Karvek activity?" Miller asked, standing behind Susan at the tactical station. "Nothing yet," she replied, scanning the area. "But this place isn't empty. I'm picking up energy readings from the surface. They're faint, but they're there." Miller studied the main viewer, Valera 9 had once been a mining colony, established to extract rare minerals from the moon's deep crust. According to records, it was abandoned years ago when the mines dried up. Could be automated systems still running, Garcia suggested from his engineering console. Kate shook her head. Those patterns are too irregular. Someone's down there. Miller made his decision. Prep a landing team. Small and quiet. We can't risk the Carvec detecting us. 30 minutes later, Miller led a team including Susan, Dr. Young, and 2 security officers toward the largest mining complex. They moved carefully across the rocky surface, using the moon's low gravity to their advantage. The main entrance to the mines stood open, dark, and uninviting. Just as they approached, lights suddenly flooded the area. Armed figures rose from hidden positions, weapons aimed at Miller's team. "Stop right there," shouted a gruff voice. "Hands where we can see them." Miller slowly raised his hands. "I'm Commander Jack Miller of the U.S. Defiant. We're human, like you." A tall man stepped forward, his face hidden behind a breathing mask. "Prove it." "We're searching for something," Miller said carefully. "Something that can help us fight the Carvec." The man stared at them for a long moment, then reached up and removed his mask. His face was weathered, with a scar running down one cheek. "I'm Captain Sam Hayes," he said, "former Earth Defense Force. Welcome to what's left of humanity." Hayes led them deep into the mines where nearly 100 people had created a hidden community. Children played in a makeshift recreation area while adults tended to hydroponics gardens that provided food. "We were lucky," Hayes explained as they walked. "Most of us were deep in the mines when the attack came. The Carvec hit the surface facilities but didn't bother with a thorough search. They thought this place was abandoned." In a small office area, Miller explained their mission and showed Hayes the data from Europa. "According to this, one of the artifacts is hidden somewhere in these mines," Miller said. Hayes' expression hardened. "The glowing rock. We found it 3 months ago, deep in the eastern tunnel. Strange things happen around it. Equipment malfunctions. Weird dreams. We sealed that section off." "We need to get to it," Miller insisted. Hayes hesitated. "It's not safe. The tunnel's unstable, and the artifact itself, it does things to people who stay near it too long." Dr. Young leaned forward. "What kind of things?" "Visions. Some see the past. Others see possible futures. One man claimed he could see through the Carvec's eyes for a moment." Hayes shuddered. "He went mad after that." Despite Hayes' warnings, he agreed to help them. He assembled a small team of his best miners to guide Miller's group through the dangerous tunnels. As they prepared to leave, a young woman rushed in. "Captain, we're picking up unusual readings in orbit." Hayes checked the crude sensor display and cursed. "Carvec scout ship. Must have detected your arrival." Miller exchanged a worried look with Susan. "The Defiant is hidden in the moon's magnetic shadow," Susan assured him. "But we need to work fast." Hayes grabbed his weapon. "Then let's move. We'll get your artifact, but we need to be quick and quiet." The group headed into the dark tunnels, their lights cutting through the blackness ahead. Above them, unseen, the Carvec began their search pattern, drawing closer with each passing minute. The tunnel sloped downward, growing narrower as they descended. Their lights cast long shadows on the rough walls. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The mining stopped here when workers began experiencing the visions, Hayes explained. "This tunnel goes another half-mile before it reaches the chamber with the artifact." Miller checked his scanner. "I'm picking up unusual energy readings ahead." Hayes nodded. "It gets stronger the closer you get. Affects electronics too." The tunnel opened into a large cavern. Strange blue crystals grew from the walls, giving the room an eerie glow. In the center, on a raised stone platform, sat the second artifact. It looked identical to the one from Europa. Curved metal with strange markings, pulsing with inner light. But where the first artifact had glowed blue, this one shone with a deep purple light. "Don't touch it directly," Hayes warned. Use the containment box we brought. As they approached the platform, the artifact's pulse quickened, as if it sensed their presence. Dr. Young moved forward with the containment box. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Just as she reached for it, a violent tremor shook the cavern. Rocks fell from the ceiling. "That wasn't natural," Susan said, drawing her weapon. Something hit the surface. Hayes's radio crackled with static. A panicked voice came through. "Captain, the Karvek are here. They've landed north of the main entrance. Dozens of them. We need to move," Miller urged. "Now." Dr. Young quickly secured the artifact in the containment box. The moment it was sealed, the tremor stopped. They could sense it, Garcia said over the comm from the Defiant. Just like Bennett said. Hayes led them through a different tunnel, one that would take them to a secondary exit away from the main complex. Above them, they could hear the sounds of weapons fire and screams. "My people are fighting," Hayes said grimly, "buying us time." They emerged from the tunnel onto a rocky plateau. In the distance, they could see the Karvek ships hovering over the main mining complex. Strange, insect-like soldiers poured into the entrance. Miller contacted the Defiant. "Kate, we need immediate extraction. Lock onto our position." "I can't get a clean lock," Kate replied. "There's too much interference from the artifact." Hayes pointed to a clearing about half a mile away. "There. The rocks are thinner. Your signal might get through." They ran across the open ground, keeping low. Suddenly, a Karvek scout ship appeared over the ridge. It spotted them immediately and opened fire. Energy blasts hit the ground around them, sending rocks and dust flying. They took cover behind a large boulder. "We'll never make it to the clearing," Susan shouted over the noise of the attack. Hayes looked at Miller, then at the containment box. "Take this and go. My people and I will draw them off." "That's suicide," Miller protested. Hayes smiled grimly. "We're already dead, Commander. We died when Earth fell. But this..." He tapped the box. "This might give humanity a future." Before Miller could argue further, Hayes signaled to his miners. They broke cover and ran in the opposite direction, firing their weapons at the scout ship. The Karvek took the bait and followed them. "Now," Miller ordered. His team sprinted for the clearing. Kate's voice came through clearer now. "I got a lock. Sending shuttle coordinates." As they reached the clearing, a shuttle from the Defiant descended through the clouds. They climbed aboard quickly. Through the viewport, Miller watched Hayes and his team fighting on the distant ridge. One by one, they fell to the Karvek weapons. "He gave his life for this," Miller said quietly, holding the containment box. They all did. The shuttle rose into the atmosphere, leaving Valera 9 behind. In orbit, the Defiant was already engaging a Karvek cruiser that had arrived. The human warship fired its main weapons, creating a gap in the Karvek line. "Shuttle secured," Peter Collins reported from communications. "Ready for jump on your command." Miller took one last look at the moon below. "2 artifacts found," he said. 5 more to go. Make the jump." The stars stretched as the Defiant leaped into FTL, carrying humanity's hope with it. The Defiant drifted silently through the Cygnus Nebula. Purple and blue gases swirled around the ship, hiding it from Karvek sensors. On the bridge, the crew gathered around a holographic display showing their next target. "The 3rd artifact is here." Miller pointed to a small planet orbiting a red dwarf star. "But our scans show heavy Karvek activity in this system." Susan studied the tactical readouts. "At least 3 cruisers and multiple scout ships. They're looking for something." "The artifact," Garcia said. He had dark circles under his eyes from working nonstop on the 2 artifacts they already possessed. "They know we're collecting them." Peter Collins spoke up from the communication station. "Commander, I'm picking up unusual transmissions from the planet. Not Karvek. Something else." Miller frowned. "Can you clean it up?" Collins worked his controls, and soon a strange clicking and whistling sound filled the bridge. It had a pattern, a rhythm that seemed almost like language. "What is that?" Dr. Young asked. "I think," Collins said slowly, "it's another species fighting the Karvek." This changed everything. Until now, they had believed humans were the only ones resisting the alien invaders. "Can we communicate with them?" Miller asked. Collins shook his head, not without getting closer and not without knowing their language. Miller made his decision. "Take us in, minimum power. Let's see who else wants the Karvek gone." The Defiant moved carefully through the nebula until they reached the edge of the system. Immediately, they detected a battle in progress. Sleek, crystalline ships were engaging the bulky Karvek cruisers. "Those ships," Susan whispered in awe. "They're beautiful." One of the crystal ships detected the Defiant and broke away from the battle. It approached cautiously, weapons ready but not firing. "They're hailing us," Collins reported with surprise. "On screen," Miller ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a being unlike anything they had seen before. It had an insect-like body with multiple limbs, but its face was almost feline, with large golden eyes and short antennae. "I am Voice of Many," the alien said in surprisingly good English. "You are human. We thought your kind extinct." Miller stepped forward. "I'm Commander Jack Miller of the U.S. Defiant. We are nearly extinct. We're searching for artifacts, ancient technology that might help us defeat the Karvek." The alien's antenna twitched. "The Forerunner devices. We have found one on our colony world below. The Karvek seek it too." "Your people know of the Forerunners?" Dr. Young asked. "The Marodi have legends," Voice of Many replied. "Ancient protectors who vanished long ago, leaving behind 7 keys to lock away a great darkness." Garcia looked at Miller. "That matches what we've learned from our artifacts." Miller nodded. "Voice of Many, we propose an alliance. Help us recover the artifact on your world, and we'll share what we know." The alien was silent for a moment. "The enemy of our enemy is our friend." An old human saying, "Yes, we accept." With the Marodi's help, the Defiant slipped past the Karvek blockade to the planet below. Miller led a team to the surface alongside Voice of Many and several Marodi warriors. The artifact was hidden in an ancient temple, buried beneath layers of soil and rock. Marodi archaeologists had been studying it for years, trying to understand its purpose. Unlike the previous 2 artifacts, this one glowed with a green light. When they brought it near the others on the Defiant, all 3 began to pulse in harmony. "They recognize each other," Garcia said in wonder. "They're meant to work together." A female Marodi scientist named Seeker of Paths asked to join the Defiant's crew to study the artifacts. "Our people share this fight now," she explained. "I may help stabilize the devices." Miller welcomed her aboard, grateful for the new alliance, but their victory was short-lived. As they prepared to leave the system, Hayes's final message reached them, transmitted before his death on Valera 9. "The Karvek can track the artifacts through quantum space," Hayes's recorded voice warned. "They feel them calling to each other across the void. You need to move quickly. Find them all before they find you." Miller looked at the star map showing the locations of the remaining 4 artifacts. Time was running out. Earth looked different now. From orbit, Miller could see the changes the Karvek had made to humanity's homeworld. Massive structures rose from the surface like giant insect hives. The oceans had turned a sickly green color. This was no longer the blue planet he remembered. 6 artifacts secured, Miller said quietly. "The final one is down there." The bridge of the Defiant was crowded. Human crew members stood alongside their Marodi allies. After months of searching, fighting, and losing good people, they had gathered 6 of the 7 Forerunner artifacts. The last piece waited on Earth, now the central command of the Karvek invasion force. Seeker of Paths, the Marodi scientist, studied the combined artifacts. They floated above a special platform, arranged in a circular pattern with a space for the missing 7th piece. Each glowed with a different color, pulsing in harmony. "The device is nearly complete," she said. "When the final piece joins with these, it will create a seal, a way to close the dimensional rift the Karvek used to enter our galaxy." Susan looked up from her tactical display. "I've located the artifact. It's in what used to be the Museum of Natural History in Old New York. The Karvek have built a fortress around it. Why would they protect it instead of destroying it?" Dr. Young asked. "They cannot destroy what they do not understand," Voice of Many explained. "The artifacts are beyond even their technology." Miller studied the scans of Earth's defenses. Hundreds of Karvek ships formed a protective web around the planet. It seemed impossible to break through. "We have one advantage," Kate said from the navigation station. "The Defiant's experimental quantum drive. If we modify it using the Forerunner technology, we might be able to jump directly into Earth's atmosphere." "They won't expect that." Garcia shook his head. "That's suicide. The stress on the hull would tear us apart." "Not if we reinforce it with the energy field from the artifacts," Seeker of Paths suggested. "They were designed to manipulate space-time. It was their only chance." For the next 24 hours, the crew worked to integrate the Forerunner technology with the ship's systems. When they finished, the Defiant hummed with new power. Blue energy lines ran through the corridors and across the hull. Miller addressed the crew one last time before the jump. "Today we fight not just for humanity, but for all free species threatened by the Karvek. Whatever happens, remember this. We are not alone, and we will not go quietly." Everyone took their positions. The ship vibrated as the modified quantum drive powered up. "All hands, brace for atmospheric jump," Miller ordered. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, now." Reality seemed to fold around them. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then, with a thunderous crack, the Defiant appeared directly above the ruins of New York City. The sudden appearance of a warship in the atmosphere created a massive shockwave that rippled outward, disabling nearby Karvek ships. "Shields holding at 60%, Garcia reported. "That worked better than expected." Miller didn't waste the advantage. "Susan, prepare the ground team. Dr. Young, Voice of Many with me. We're going after the artifact." As the ground team deployed to the museum, the Defiant engaged the Karvek fleet that was quickly responding to their arrival. The battle for Earth had begun. Inside the museum, Miller's team fought through waves of Karvek soldiers. The aliens were desperate to protect the artifact, confirming its importance. They reached the central chamber where the seventh artifact floated in a containment field. Unlike the others, this one glowed with a bright red light. Miller disabled the field and secured the artifact. "We have it," he told the Defiant. "Prepare for our return." But outside, the situation had worsened. The Karvek had surrounded the Defiant. The ship was taking heavy damage. "Commander," Kate's voice came through his comm, "we can't hold much longer. The artifacts need to be activated now." Miller looked at the seventh piece in his hands, then at Earth, his home, now alien and strange. He knew what he had to do. "I'm activating it here," he said. "Get the ship to safety." "Jack, no," Susan protested. Miller smiled. "It's been an honor serving with all of you. Now go, give humanity its future." As the Defiant escaped Earth's orbit, Miller brought the final artifact together with the one from the ship he had carried down. The two pieces recognized each other, creating a blast of energy that spread outward, connecting with the other 5 pieces on the Defiant. A great light engulfed Earth as the dimensional seal activated. The Karvek ships began to be pulled back through the rift they had created, taking Miller and the museum with them.